So we're looking at equality and diversity and inclusion again today, but we're looking at learning outcome 4, which is understand how to manage risk and balance rights with duty of care. Now there's only 2 assessment criteria in here. So for 4.1, we're going to look at describe ethical dilemmas in the workplace when balancing individual rights with the duty of care. And then 4.2, explain the principles of informed choice and capacity. So we're going to start off with just a bit of key terminology, explaining a few things, and then we'll make a start into the assessment criteria. So when we're looking at ethical dilemmas, we need to know what an ethical dilemma is. So normally it's just a difficult choice that you need to make between 2 actions or 2 choices. So it really means what suits you, what your own principles are, what your own morality is. So normally it's not an easy decision. It is always a difficult situation that you're having to think about. So there are some examples of ethical dilemmas in healthcare here. We've got advanced directives. You've got surrogate decision making. So advanced directive will be when maybe you're terminally ill, or if you know that you're not very well, you might say, I don't want to be, I want my machines turned off after a certain weight, don't give me extraordinary measures, and so on. You might have refusal of treatment. There might be conflict with the caregiver. So if there's somebody who's ill, one person within their care team or family will make one choice, another person will say, no, I don't agree, I want to do this instead. So it really can be a situation. You've got foregoing life sustainment treatment, and then you've got DNAR, the do not attempt resuscitation orders. So some of these are dilemmas that you could possibly see in the future. Then we've got principle of informed choice. Now this is going to be relevant for when we look at 4.2. So the principle of informed choice is the ability to make sure that you can, determine your own preferences, your own goals. You know what you want. You have enough information to make a good choice. That you've got the capacity of, you've got competence to make your own decisions, and that you can listen to something, be given information, deliberate on it, reason on it, and then make a reasoned choice according to the information you've been given. So informed choice, it's a key component of acceptability and is integral to assessing benefits of screening programs. So what this means is it'll make sure that you are informed, that you're able to make your own choices, and that you know exactly what you're getting into, in other words. So we've got a couple of bits here. So we've got informed choice. So it's just, again, informed choice just means you've got the information and you've made it with the competency and of your own. You made it according to your own values and to your own behavior. Informed decision is where a choice is made by a reasonable individual using the information that they've been given. They can look at the advantages and disadvantages and act in accordance to that. Autonomous choice is when there's people who will act intentionally, they'll act with understanding, and they'll act by without anybody controlling them. So you might have information given to you. You might know exactly what you're going to do. You know 100% you know what you want to do, but you're not getting controlled by someone else. You've not got somebody, a family member or a caregiver, whispering to you and saying, no, this is not the right choice. You should do what I tell you. And then you've got evidence-based patient choice. So this is when you use evidence based on information. So when you're getting, for example, if you're giving somebody information that you're in touch with now, you're going to back it up with evidence or facts or criteria, and you're going to say, this particular product here will help you do this, this, and this because I've seen it in this patient and that patient and that patient, and so on. So is that okay, these 2 sections we just talked about?
Yeah, it's just I think it's common sense, isn't it? So, well, when a situation does arise or when you do have to make decisions, rather than just make a swift decision. Sometimes you might not be able, you know, it might be a situation where you might have to act there and then, depending on how serious or what the situation is, especially if someone's life's at risk or something. But if it's just something like normal and that, it's just, yeah.
Then you have the time to think, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, make the right decision and not, you know, jump too far ahead, as they say, and
not being told, oh, you've got, every minute counts or everything like that. You know, like when you see in movies and everyone's pushing you towards something. Yeah, it depends on the situation, exactly. So we're going on to 4.1. So we're going to describe ethical dilemmas in the workplace when balancing individual rights with the duty of care. So when we look at ethical dilemmas, it involves the need to choose from two or more morally acceptable options. So both of the options might be equally unacceptable. You know, you might have really bad choices in either case. Some might contain more risks, another one will have risks, but you've got to try and make them. They're both bad choices, to be honest. So when one choice prevents the selection of another, that's a ethical dilemma. You've got advances in medicine. So because of economic stress, you know, patients who know what they want, they're determined, they've got different values, they might have a different thinking or beliefs compared to their healthcare workers. So there's a lot of issues that can contribute within wanting something or being able to do something. So all of these factors will contribute to the frequency and complexity of ethical issues. So to be honest, you can probably think of 1,000 things in general on a daily basis where you've got a difference of opinion, or somebody likes a particular thing, they don't want injections, but you know this injection might help them. So there's a lot of different issues that can come up. When you're looking at ethical dilemmas, especially in the workplace, if it's with your patients or with your colleagues, you've got to make sure that you're respecting their dignity, because we're doing equality and diversity right now. Dignity is a very big thing within this. Dignity covers almost every aspect of life. You've got your respect, your privacy, your autonomy, where you've got a choice that you can make yourself. You've also got your self-worth. Sometimes making a decision and putting your self-worth down, you've got to think, is it worth it? Was this choice reasonable for me? Should I have made it or shouldn't I have made it? So a lot of people can think like that. So when you've got dignity, it can be very difficult to define what you need to do. So what is clear is that people know when they have been treated with dignity and respect, and you know when you're not being treated with dignity and respect. It can be a tone of voice, a look, you know, having your choices not being met. There's a million things that you can see. So dignity is about your interpersonal behaviors, it's about your systems, it's about your processes, it's about how you go within your day-to-day life. If you have somebody, I'm pretty sure there'll be some people that you prefer more than others. You know, when they come to see you, they're going to speak to you with respect, they're going to give you dignity, they're going to give you privacy. And then there's other people that might come and they might just all up in your face, they might not listen to you, they might not respect your choices. So you know when you've been dealt in a good way and not in a good way. So we've got a following table, and it shows good practice and bad practice examples. So this little section on here helps you maintain dignity and the other doesn't. So we'll go one each. So when you're knocking before entering the individual's room, that's dignity, you're in privacy. When you're walking into individual's room without knocking, you're compromising it. You might greet and speak to someone. So that's you being maintaining. Compromising is ignoring an individual while you're carrying out your own work. So you could have walked into their room and checking charts or gone in to change bed sheets and so on. And the patient could be there, the resident could be there, and you just completely ignored them. I mean, saying a simple hello doesn't hurt. Maintaining it is to ask for consent before touching them, especially when you're doing personal care. When you're doing maintaining privacy as well, if you ever have a situation where you're doing personal care, giving them bed baths or changing them, make sure that only the part of the body that you're cleaning, for example, the arm or the leg, is uncovered. Every other part of the body should be covered by a sheet. So you don't just pull a sheet off, have them lying there naked and completely cleaning them off. It's not dignified for them. Compromising it would be to perform personal care without their consent. They said no to you. They don't want you to touch them, but you still carry on. Maintaining it is by sharing personal information on a need-to-know basis. So don't just go out and start gossiping to somebody else and saying, oh, do you know what I found out today? Or this person's got a tattoo, or that person's got a war. There's no point in that. And then compromising it is telling people's families and friends personal information or even medical information without their consent or without a good reason. Now, if it was a child under 16 or 18, then you telling their family members is fine. You can tell them, say that this person needs this, that, and the other. But for an adult, that's an issue. So, Lee, can you think of any points where you might have noticed where there's maintenance of dignity and then there's a compromise?
Well, to be honest, I think we see it in day-to-day life, don't we? Wherever we go, whether we're going to the shops or whether, we're in, wherever we are, to be honest, it's about keeping the dignity of so I'm in a rehab. The staff will always knock before they come in, even though it's their house. Even though they'll still knock before they come into a room because it's dignity, isn't it? It's showing respect for that person. And what you were saying before that about the difference of opinions and stuff like that, I mean, I think it's great that, in work nowadays, there's a different diverse of individuals, like professionals, that work together in a team, because if it wasn't for that, I don't think the team would function as a unit, because everyone would think the same and do the same. And sometimes you might need that person that might be a bit softer, you might need that person that might be a bit harsher, you know what I mean? But it works well, it fits in. When it comes to individuals and patients, saying that someone might need an injection or they might not need an injection, all we can do is support and just, ask them to just say, look, this is going to benefit you. Well, they still have that choice whether they choose to accept that or not. You know what I mean? All we can do is, like professionals as health and social care workers, is just try our best. Try our best to help that person, the best that we know how to, because we're all different. And I believe that what's in your heart is what comes out. It's what you display. It shines through, doesn't it? Yeah. So if you've got a bad heart, then all you're going to produce is bad stuff. You know what I mean? And maybe you're in the wrong job, but if you've got a good heart and you've got a heart to see people do well, a heart to see people succeed, a heart to see people, overcome the battles that they're struggling with at that time, then you're going to produce the right actions that's going to help them people. Exactly, 100%. So let's go on to slide 7. So on here, we're just going to talk about justice now. So justice, not in like legal way, like as a criminal way, justice as in medical ethics. So justice is when you're weighing up if something is ethical or not, when you're thinking about if it's compatible with the law, if it's compatible with the patient's right, and if it's fair and balanced. If there's a particular medication that is available, should this person get it? Why should they get it? And so on. You're having to look at it. It also means that we make sure that we're not, treating anybody unfairly, that people in general are not unfairly disadvantaged, especially when it comes to access to healthcare. I mean, that's the great thing about the UK NHS system, is that anybody, regardless of how much money you have or how much money you don't have, you will get treated. In countries like America, there's an issue that you go in for a general appointment and you're having to pay. People that can afford it, they'll go in, but people that can't afford it, they're very likely to let things get very serious before they actually go to get treatment. So
I think we're very lucky here. Justice is also to make sure that you treat patients impartially, without bias, especially when you're looking at the gender, race, wealth, and so on. It's points that we've covered already within equality and diversity. Then justice usually focuses on who gets the medical treatment and who doesn't. So there's an example of this. In the 1960s, there was, now dialysis is very available now because a lot of advancements had become. So people with kidney issues, when they're having to go in to get a dialysis once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, they're able to go in and they can go and get it done. In the 1960s, this was new. It wasn't available for everyone, and it was very, very expensive. So there was a dilemma of who gets it and who doesn't. So because the demand exceeded the supply, and dialysis, as I said, was expensive and not accessible on a large scale, this meant that everybody that actually needed it wasn't able to receive it. So at that point, they had to check the principle of justice. They had to see who gets the treatment and who doesn't. So that's the ethical consideration that was made in place. It's the same thing now. If we look at the transplant list, there could be a patient that's been on it for 2 years. They might be ill, they might need a new heart, but they're not too bad off. Then there could be a patient that has just gone on it straight away, and maybe in 2-3 days they end up getting a new heart. So you've got to think, is it fair on the person that's been on it for years compared to the person that is only just gone on it? So in a way, I think it is, because obviously they're checking to see who's worse off, which person is in the worst condition, and they're working it in that type of like a number point scale to see who gets what. So they've got a little scale that they work off. Then we've got risk management. So it's not always possible to give the services that people need or to support them in a way that might fully respect their values. There are some times where risks have to be considered, and you've got to manage those risks. So, for example of this is when a person might be at significant risk of harm if they were not restrained. So you might have a person who that they might harm themselves or harm others. Do you let them just sit there loosely, or are you going to restrain them? So it's not very dignified for the person to have arm restraints or leg restraints on. But if you know that by doing this is going to help them not harm themselves, you have to balance that risk. So you've got to just make sure that you're supporting them in a way that you're balancing the risks, you're making compromises, but these are actually managed. So we've got a diagram on the next slide which shows us how this can be done. So on here, this is for somebody who has dementia. This is where I got this from. Now, we've got to think, because for dementia, it's somebody who obviously they're forgetting things. They're not quite in their right mind at that moment. So there's a few points here. You've got maximize freedom at the top, and then you go minimize risk. So in an ideal world, you're following the person's wishes. You're not doing any restraints. You're not locking them in. You're not forcing them. You're not taking them to the toilet and standing there while they're using the toilet. As a compromise, you might have to accompany them on a walk or wait near the toilet. You might have a spy hole, or just make sure that someone's not harming themselves with a little, you've got door alarms. So if somebody tries to walk out, you know that somebody has left the building and you're aware, and you can minimize the risks. And you might install safety handles, the bigger handles where someone can pull themselves up steps. Or you might want to limit the number of walks. And then practical, so according to family and society's needs, there's no danger to self or others, and everything's fine. So this just gives you a nice little idea of how you would look at different risks. And we go on to duty of care. So as we know, we've all got a duty of care to everybody that we see on a daily basis. You've got a duty of care to your patients, you've got a duty of care to staff members, to residents. You ought to make sure that you're promoting their well-being, you're safeguarding them, You're making sure that they're not getting harmed, abused, or injured. Look at your health and safety aspects. If you've got chairs littering around or bags around everywhere, it's a trip hazard. So you've got to make sure that these things are looked after. Now, duty of care is part of the code of conduct for healthcare workers. So it's important that you have knowledge and skills to act on your duty of care in your role. So you need to be aware of what it is that you're meant to do so you can actually do it. Then we've got the NHS Constitution of 2011. They just got some care standard documents, and these standards are built on 5 principles. And again, these are just so relevant within equality and diversity, it goes without saying. Got dignity and respect, compassion, be included, responsive care, and support and well-being. So that is 4.1. Are you okay with this section?
Yeah, my mind wandered off a bit. I started that. I don't know, in a good way, to be honest. I watched this thing a bit ago, and it was some guy, and he was talking about some guy, and he went to Africa, and there was this girl. She was very, very young, really young. She was about 4 or 5, and she was curled up in a ball, dying. And they've been told in that area that they couldn't, because of the disease and whatever else, that they couldn't, you know, be in contact or do anything. Well, this guy was a photographer.
That there's children there, cursed children, or children that have been taken over by spirits. It's a very big thing there at the moment.
Well, there was a vulture on standby. Obviously, this vulture knew that this girl was, you know, close to death. And this guy took the picture of this girl like curled up in a ball, and this vulture about to do whatever it was going to do and walked away. Now, this photograph, it got, I can't remember what year it was, but it got voted the best photograph ever, and for this thing, and it was like the gold prize in photography, and the whole. What I'm trying to say is, what I got from it, this guy ended up dying. Well, he killed himself about 4 months later because he couldn't handle the fact that, and you know.
But he left her there.
He left her, and he should have picked her up. He should have, you know, comforted her. And I actually had tears. I don't cry often, but I had tears when I watched it. And you know, it makes you. It's the same with health and social care or anything in life. Like, you know, if you haven't got the heart to do it, if you haven't got the heart to be in that, you know, job to help people, you know, what's the point? There's no significance in what you're doing. You know what I mean? There's no significance in actually being in that job role. So what's the point? You know?
Exactly.
So I think everything you just said.
Yeah.
Oh, go on.
No, so carry on, it's okay.
I was going to say, everything that you just said there is about the rights of the patients. It's about the legislations and the acts of, you know, what patients are entitled to, or clients, or, you know, people that you work with. It's what they're entitled to. But if your heart's not in it, or you haven't got the heart for that, then what's the purpose of doing it? Because you're not really going to make a difference. You're not really going to. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, if it's for money-wise, to be honest, healthcare is not as highly paid as it could be, to be quite honest with that. I mean, if you're going in for money, you can go into a different profession. This profession really needs compassion. It needs you to actually feel for your patients, feel for the people that you're working with. You can't just go in day to day and, you know, leave the job at the end of the day. You end up carrying it with you and taking it with you, and it needs the right type of people to be within it. So we've got just a couple of legislations and so on this section. So we're going to look at 4.2, explain the principles of informed choice and capacity. We're looking at Mental Capacity Act of 2005. And this act actually came about to protect individuals who are vulnerable, people who can't decide for their own care and treatment because of a number of reasons. It could be because of dementia, brain injury, autism, so many different reasons. This act actually makes it clear about who can make decisions and who can't, because it'll help the persons who are being looked after to not be abused. They might be in a bad situation with family members. Not every family is the same. Not every situation is the same. Some can be loving, supporting family members. Some may not be. So they might not act on the best interests of that person. So you've got to make sure that that is what's happening. This is why this act came about. So it came into force in 2007, and it is part of the Code of Practice. So this code has a statutory force, so it means that certain people have a legal duty to regard it, and these are an attorney under a lasting power of attorney, so an LPA, a deputy appointed by the Court of Protection. So these people have to make sure that this is enforced. So an independent mental capacity.
Hello?
Lee, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. Did you lose audio for a second?
Yeah.
Right. So I'll go from the top on this slide, okay? So these people have to make sure that this mental capacity act is followed. So an independent mental capacity advocate. So if there's a person, they don't have people acting in their best of interest, they get somebody from a third party to come in. So one of these people. Any person carrying out research. Any person who's acting in a professional capacity. So anybody within healthcare, they're all under this category. And any person who's being paid to act for or in relation to a person who hasn't got the capacity. So a person might be working for them, or they might get paid by the government to look after that person. They all need to make sure that they follow the act. And then the Mental Capacity Act has set out 5 principles that have to be followed by the legal requirements. So a person must be assumed to have capacity unless it's established otherwise. So you've got to make sure, check, have they got the mental capacity to make their own decisions or not? That's how it will work. A person is not to be treated as unable to make a decision unless all practical steps to help him or her have been done and without success. So a person is not to be treated as unable to make a decision merely because an unwise decision is made. So they might have not made a great decision, but it doesn't mean they can't make one, which is where you come into informed capacity. You've got to make sure that they get the right information. And then an act has been done or a decision has been made under this act on behalf of a person who lacks capacity, and it must be in their best interest. It can't follow your own agenda. It has to be for that person and only for that person, to make sure they get the best results possible. And before this act is implemented or a decision is made, care needs to be taken to avoid restricting a person's rights and freedom of action. So make sure that you're not eradicating someone's rights or freedom when you're making a decision. So that was 4.2. When we looked at informed choice at the beginning, those points and this Mental Capacity Act cover here. So we just looked at ethical dilemmas and we looked at principles of informed choice. So it was the Mental Capacity Act. So that's it for here. I'm going to